Some of my favorite current events to talk about are the rise of game development in areas of the world that just have not been known for game development or even game availability. Yeah, I've made videos in the past year and a half of my channel now talking about the rise of game development in places like Italy, France, Saudi Arabia, and a few other countries. But it turns out if you want to know like the #1 sleeping giant for game development and specifically game consumption, that it turns out would be Africa. Yeah, so this continent of the world has not been notoriously known for its video game consumption, but in recent years, like really recent years, this has all been changing. A big report came out just recently, so a lot of people are talking about this. So in 2022, just 2 years ago, the annual revenue of the gaming sector in Africa was $862 million US. Now get this, just 2 years later, 2024, this year it is actually expected to break $1 billion. Yeah, the gaming revenue is rising tremendously. So it's mainly this new report by Newzoo where they talk about the Middle East and mainly Africa as having a projected growth in gaming revenue this year of 8.9%. That is absolutely wild when compared to the North American market, which, although giant, is only expected to grow by 0.6% this year. Now, there are three main reasons that have been given on why Africa is suddenly exploding in popularity in terms of the video game sector of the world. So the first is that I guess Africa has an increasing youthful population. They've got a lot of younger people. I didn't know that, but I guess it looks like, you know, they're comparing it to North America and Europe where the population is generally older. So those are just kind of demographic stuff, but the other two I think are probably the most important, and that is that there is an increase in the availability of internet connection in Africa, and there has been this huge widespread adoption of smartphones recently. So you put all three of those things together and you end up with a bunch of kids with smartphones and iPads that can connect to the App Store. Yeah, I guess mobile gaming is huge in Africa as a result of all of this. So like there is this group called the Pan-African Gaming Group. They're a big like social network of local game developers in Africa. They do some research as well, and they found that 92% of many of Africa's largest countries use mobile devices as their primary and sometimes only gaming platform. Now also something that is interesting is that there isn't a ton of African game developers. There's a lot more consumers than suppliers in terms of the gaming industry in Africa. But that might change pretty soon here. So there's also been a ton of outside investment into Africa's gaming sector from companies like Disney, EA, and even recently Microsoft and Sony. Yeah, Microsoft, I just made a video about this like last month. They've been really embracing their African gaming sector as of late. Sony recently had a $10 million venture capital fund that was aimed at supporting these sort of tech startups in Africa, and that of course included these startups that are focused on gaming. Disney recently partnered with an African game developer to develop a mobile game for one of their Disney series. EA kind of did the same thing with expanding their football club game, the mobile game, basically throughout the African region. And Riot Games has even recently, like just this year, supported servers of Valorant and League of Legends in Africa. So overall, things are looking great for Africa in the video game sector. Like I said, they're supposed to hit $1 billion worth of revenue this year. And while that is great, it does just look like as of right now, this is more from a consumer standpoint because of the availability of technology and not so much on the supply side of things. But with all of these big investments as of late by big companies like EA and Disney and Riot Games, that could change. We could see some pretty big or even just indie game developers that really do well coming from Africa.